This is Gary Geiman with the Dominate the Day podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to help you get 1% better in your business, provide clarity, and give you some ideas that will help you grow your business. If you're ready to dominate the day, let's go.
Dominate the day, that's what we're about to do. If you don't want to dominate, then this podcast ain't for you. But if you are, then keep listening, cause every single damn day, the mission is to dominate. You already know we're here to dominate the day. So if you want to dominate every day, then let's go, it's time to grow. This is another episode of Dominate the Day.
Let's talk about what you're doing now and, based upon the stuff that you learn, like what you do differently than other companies. And then we'll talk a little bit about how most people listening are either underinsured or overpaying for the insurance they have.
Okay, so now I work USI Insurance. We're a national broker. We have a lot of local agencies, though. I myself specialize in the construction, industrial manufacturing space, but have written restaurants, stuff like that. And so now we still do a lot of cold calling. So right now we do about 60 calls a week at a minimum, and we try to set 3 appointments a week at a minimum. And we try to book, $10,000 in revenue a month. All we do now is basically we will sit down, make our calls, and it's always highly researched. I always try to know the decision maker, what the company's about. If we have a similar core value, like USI does a lot of give back stuff. So if I call on someone that and their website shows them giving to charity or something, I will say, hey, look, we're involved with the Cincinnati Boys and Girls Club. Are you guys involved? Are you planning on going to any events, stuff like that? And then all of a sudden, they're like, oh, okay, this guy just asked me about what I do for the community. They're in the community. That's cool. And I get them talking, and then I say, okay, cool. I'm glad to meet you. And I introduce myself. And usually the pitch is, hey, I'm Tyler with USI. I work in the construction space, and I work with a lot of excavating companies and roofers. And what we noticed is there's a lack of, a pollution coverage. It's always excluded. And if you're an excavator and you're digging down, and you hit a sewage line or a leach line, and it leaks out and it gets into the water, you're on the hook, and the EPA is coming after you. You're going to pay $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 clean that up, and you have no coverage. Would you like to set up a time to discuss this? They say no, and then you say, well, I totally get that. I hear that all the time. A lot of my clients said the same thing before they were my clients, and here's the thing. Once we sat down, reviewed the policies, and I showed them that A, we could save them $8,000 to $10,000, and B, they're not going to get hit with a $300,000 fine because they're actually covered and their insurance is going to react the way they think it's going to react, then they're a lot happier they met with me. How about Tuesday at 3? Now, that was a rough thing, and, people aren't going to always say yes, but the moral of the story is we try to use connection points and then social proof and then case studies. So, I said, hey, we're a part of a similar organization. We do a lot of the same thing. Cool. B, social proof. I work with X, Y, and Z, and here's what we're seeing. And C, a case study is when I meet with people, we review the policies and we find a financial impact that's worth this much to your bottom line and this much to your future. And that is essentially the baseline of how people should be selling, because A, if you call me and you just start pitching me right away, I'm going to hang up. B, if you don't have a financial impact that's not going to affect my bottom line or my wallet, I'm not going to care. I'm not just going to buy your product just to buy your product. So you have to have you have to have a sales pitch. You have to have a script, essentially, and it should follow something like that. And we do a lot of that, and we do a lot of networking. I'm wearing a collared shirt and pants tonight. We're going to the Allied Construction Industries dinner tonight, so I hope to meet some people in the same industries, shake some hands, maybe drink a bourbon. I don't know. Do a lot of that, and honestly, we get involved too. We do a lot of give back. Like, I wasn't joking. We do a lot of volunteer work. We do. We're working on growing our footprint in the the foundations or giving back to our community. So. That just being present in the community, it's more about being present, knowing people, than it is making phone calls. Granted, dialing for dollars still works, and you should do it if it's logical. Yeah. So that's kind of what we do now, and it does work. If you make the phone calls, it works. I've seen people get fired because they don't make calls, and I've seen people that say they make calls get fired because they don't make calls. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's two things you said that are really, really important. Number one is using your network, and you do a really good job of that. Knowing, like, making connections with people that maybe are 2 or 3 connections away from you. Identifying like a opportunity, and then figuring out who knows them so you can connect. And then 2, you said something that really should jolt everybody that's listening, because this is very, very true. Because everybody is always like bitching and moaning about their insurance and how much they're paying and all that stuff. And so they go get Next or whatever the garbage commercial carriers are that'll give you a certificate of insurance so you can show whoever. But you said you want to know that your insurance is going to react the way that you expect it to react. And see, that's what insurance is for. It's not to show a COI to somebody so you can get a job, right? Insurance is there to protect you and your business and the continuity of it. I know someone, this was in the mortgage industry, and this was 30 years ago. It was it would have been a couple years before I got into the industry. And in 96, I went and worked for this company, and it was just the 2 owners. They brought me on to recruit, sell, grow. We did that. But the backstory of one of the owners was he used to own another mortgage company, and they had a claim at the office because someone came in to sign, and when they came in to sign, they fell. Not sure exactly how or why, right? But they fell. They injured themselves. And what they thought was this small little, Betty has a boo-boo on her arm or whatever. She literally broke her arm and her hip. Wow. Because she was an older lady. Yeah. So she filed a claim. The mortgage company did not have any liability insurance, because why would you need it? Right? They had I take that back. They had liability. They didn't have liability that covered that inside the office. It was other things. They thought they did.
Yeah, they had like a professional liability and E&O to cover their professional work. Exactly. Yeah.
Their insurance didn't act or react the way they thought it would react. Long story short, they ended up having to file bankruptcy and close that company down.
Yeah, you see it all the time. Like, a lot of times in construction work, believe it or not, insurance carriers prefer you do work for commercial, because you're going to less places likely. You're at the site more. It's probably more controlled because the commercial facility is probably going to control it a lot more than the commercial site, the GC, whoever have you. So they don't really like residential work, and they'll exclude a lot of residential. Like, I've seen residential work excluded completely on, it was a home builder actually.
Wow.
They did remodeling and home building, and like 40% of their revenue was coming from residential add-ons, stuff like that. They had no idea.
No coverage for it.
No coverage. You could see another good one was I did another excavating contractor. So right now with excavators, when they're digging, like a lot of the lines, they provide data. Like they can provide data, power, whatever. Mm-hmm. There's a time element, and if they cut one of those lines, they have to reimburse the people back for the time lost that the data wasn't there for the whatever. So, and then you also have, pollution's always excluded. There's a concrete guy in California. He was sawing concrete in the silica. He was right next to a senior home, and the silica went up in the air, wind blew into the HVAC, and like 30 senior citizens had to go to the hospital because silica got into their lungs. And he didn't have a pollution policy, and guess what? That's considered pollution. And he had to pay for 30 people in the hospital plus litigation, all that stuff. He went out of business.
Ouch.
Yeah. So, and I know a lot of pressure washers listen to this. I mean, you guys just spray, and the bleach comes down and goes into waterways, like into the drains. Like, if they want to come after you, they can. Right. And I guarantee you most of you can't cash flow that. And pollution is excluded unless you have a pollution policy. So yeah.
So 3 things related to home improvement, or home service company, mobile home service companies, we'll call them, pressure washing, carpet cleaner, junk removal, like any home service business. 3 things I'm going to talk about, and you can or I'll point out, and you can talk about them. Number 1 is commercial vehicle insurance and how that relates to personal vehicles used, because that's a big one, right? Number 2 is, and I'm trying to think of what the name of this is. It's coverage. This is specific to pressure washing. It was coverage based upon
Care, custody, and control.
Care, custody, and control.
That's actually not just the pressure. That's everyone.
Okay. That's everybody. Okay. Yeah. It was something that we learned about the hard way a few times.
Yeah.
So commercial vehicle coverage related to personal vehicle use, because if you drive your personal vehicle and use it for work at any time, and you are in an accident, cause an accident, like it's an issue. Care, custody, and control. And going back to commercial vehicle, you can talk about kind of some experiences about where people have done that, obviously. Care, custody, and control, another big one. And then exclusions.
Yeah.
All the exclusions related to what it is your business does, like if you use a ladder, if you're using any kind of, like, let's say, fire source, right? Yeah. And then if you are providing some type of, I don't know if you consider it like a warranty or a guarantee. Like, for instance, if you're cleaning out dryer vents, right? Mm-hmm. And you clean out the dryer vent, and 2 months later there's a fire because of the dryer vent.
Yeah.
That's what's your coverage like. And so a lot of guys care about what their premium is instead of what it is they have, when really at the end of the day, you can get what you need to cover yourself and still not get crushed with insurance premiums, right? Yeah. I mean, we were doing 7 figures, and that year, like commercial and GL, of course, workers' comp here is in Ohio, so commercial, GL, like we were paying, I want to say $4 or $5 grand a month, something like that. So like say 50, 60 were our premium. I feel like it was pretty cheap.
Yeah, it is nowadays, because now it's considered a hard market. So it's hard to get coverages, A, and B, it's hard to get cheap coverages, B, unless you use, the next. And next, I've seen them pulling out left and right. So, and and I even saw, I was reading on a junk removal post, guys like, yeah, we got audited and we got hit with a $20,000 bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you put the numbers in and you don't know what you were doing.
Yeah, right.
So commercial auto, so let's start with you're driving job to job and you don't have commercial auto. Honestly, that's not that big of a deal if you have a carrier that can elect business use on a personal policy. Where you're going to run into issues is, and let me be clear, that's very few carriers. Like State Farm will do it. Progressive won't do it, no. Honestly, there's like 3 or 4 carriers off the top of my head. I can't think of it, but they're the only ones that are going to give you business use. So then that means is if you get into an accident, they're going to cover it even if they know that you're doing business, right? Because you should have a business policy. You're doing business. The problem we're going to run into is most people are their liability limits are $100,000, $300,000. So $100,000 per occurrence up to $300,000. If you kill somebody, so we're talking worst case scenario. So if you hit somebody and they die, their family is going to sue you for
millions
because they're like, oh, he owns a business, he's rich. Mm-hmm. Now we all know that's not always the case. Let's just say you hurt somebody really badly. $100,000, that's the limit right there. They're not going to go up. They might go up to 300, but a hospital stay for months, are you going to be able to pay for that with that coverage? Because their medical coverage is going to say, no, we're going after the auto insurer. And then your company is going to subrogate, meaning they're going to negotiate without you there, and they're going to write a check, and then they're going to say, "Hey, buddy, you owe X amount."
Right.
And then you're going
to owe the insurance company.
Yeah, and you also have legal fees. You have a lawyer, which that $100,000 is going to that lawyer. So at a minimum, you want to carry $1 million in liability at a minimum, and that's if you have like 5 to 10 maybe fleet. If you get bigger than that, you probably want more than that. And if you have employees that are using their cars, driving to work sites, you want to make sure you have hired and non-owned, and that just covers vehicles that you've hired, so people that you've hired but you don't own the vehicles, and that'll usually go on the auto policy. But if you don't have an auto policy, make sure it's on your general liability policy. It's an endorsement. It's like $85 a year. There you go. So the big takeaway here is, yes, your insurance company will probably cover you. However, your payout is going to be much higher, and you're going to pay out of pocket. You're going to litigate. You're going to pay for expenses because they are treating you like you have $1 million policy and like you're a millionaire. So they're not going to just stop at 100. A good lawyer, he's not going to stop at 100K. No. And guess what? As soon as like they figure out they're hurt or someone dies, hopefully they don't, they're coming for you. And your employee could die too, and that that's stuff that you got to think about. So, and I always dealt with that when I was at my smaller agency with guys. They come to me for a general liability policy, and granted, I wasn't as well versed then, so I couldn't really educate them. I just say, oh, you should have this. Like, why? Well, I didn't really have the knowledge, but now I do, and it's just to pay for a commercial, and so to pay for a commercial auto policy is not that expensive. And B, if you're insuring your vehicle on a commercial auto policy, it doesn't have to be on a personal policy. So you can just, you take on a little bit more cost, but you don't have to double insure, if that makes sense.
You don't have to carry personal and commercial. But if you're using your vehicle for commercial, like so I have a vehicle, I have a truck, Gary Geiman, it's titled in my name, but I'm using it to do whatever home service, business, carry equipment around, blah, 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 blah. You should have it insured as a commercial vehicle, correct?
Yeah.
And the liability that is attached to basically you owning a business, not just driving a vehicle for the business, but you owning a business, the liability is, and I'm going to say the liability insurance is the protection that you want to have that makes sure that you stay in business.
Yeah. And I've heard this too. Like a lot of guys like, oh, I'll just file bankruptcy.
That's horrible. Yeah. I mean, sure, if you get down to it, but that's not
that's not the next. That's not your next step.
That's not a business continuity plan.
No, and then your credit's ruined. How are you going to start another business? Because all your cash flow is depleted. You don't have any credit. Like, good luck.
Right.
So the next one you bring is care, custody, and control, and that's an endorsement. It's verbiage on your policy that basically states anything in your possession while you're doing your work, if it is damaged, it's going to be covered. That's all there is to it. And guess what? That can be not in there. It can be excluded, or it could be there.
We know specific pressure companies that insure pressure washing contractors that have it excluded.
Yeah.
Not just not in the policy, like it's excluded. So I'm going to give you an example, and you tell me if care, custody, and control is excluded, if they will pay. Right?
Okay.
So we had a roof cleaning job. This was probably about 8 years ago. This is when me and my brother were both in the field. So we had this roof cleaning job. It was actually roof, house, deck, driveway. It was a whole day, 10-hour day kind of thing, $3,500, $4,000 ticket, something like that. It was higher than that. It was like $5,000 ticket. So two things happen. First of all, we start on the roof, and I'm watering the piss out of everything, right? And we get done doing the roof. Everything looks great. We start on the house. The garage door was, this is when Sherwin-Williams first started coming out with that paint.
Yeah.
The garage door starts to change colors. Holy shit, right? Garage door starts to change colors. Oh, my God. The trim starts to change colors. Oh, my effing God. What is going to happen, right? So we get all that figured out, and then I get a call the next day. I think that's the worst of it. We're going to have a painter come and, do everything. I think it was going to be like $1,200 to paint and all that shit. And she tells me that her black powder-coated aluminum 8-foot table that she bought from Watson's, which is a higher-end outdoor furniture place around here, had white speckles all over it, and we all know where those came from, right? So I look up that table, and it's like $3,800, right? So I have $5,000 at a minimum, right, in damages. Now, $5,000, I'm not filing a claim, right? But let's say that's $50,000.
Yeah.
Let's say not only did we fuck up the table, but it was a Trex deck. And let's say we bleached the shit out of the wood, right, and destroyed it because the Trex deck was like 2 years old, or even newer than it might even have been a year old. Right?
Yeah.
That's why I was like watering the piss out of everything. So $30,000, $40,000 deck, $3,800, $4,000 table, paint job could have been $3, $4, we could have $50,000 claim like that. And we all know that can happen. I mean, you're spraying bleach hot, and we were, because we were trying to kill shit, and it was hot outside. So you get those two reactors. All of a sudden you got $50,000 worth of damage. You ain't got that in your pocket. You go to your insurance company and you don't have care, custody, and control. What's the insurance company telling you?
They're going to decline that because you're the professional. All those things were in your care, your custody, and your control, and that's the clear definition. So, in my opinion, yeah, that's going to be declined. I'm not a law specialist, but I would firmly believe that's a loss that they're not going to cover. It's going to be your loss.
So if it's excluded, definitely a loss. What if it's not? What if it's just not listed? Like, what if it's not excluded, but it doesn't have that? What is it called? An addendum or whatever on the policy?
Not listed.
Yeah, it's not a listed. I mean, then maybe, but you're fighting, right?
Maybe, yeah. It's all going to come down to the adjuster, the underwriter, all that. It's going to come back to the carrier. And at that point, you just want to make sure it's there. And you can ask for it, and your agent should ask for it. And if the agent says, yes, you have it, if it's on the policy, get it in writing, keep it, because then that's an E&O on them, errors and omission, kind of like professional liability. We'll talk about that in a second.
What percentage of policies do you look at in the construction space? Because we'll say construction and home service all together don't have care, custody, and control excluded. Like, what percentage do you see?
I'd say 40 to 30%. I'm not dealing with a lot of pressure washers these days, but yeah.
So 3 to 4 out of every 10
probably, yeah,
have it excluded.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, they still know.
They don't know or understand what it is.
Yeah, and right now, like I said, it's a hard market. So what's going to happen is you're going to get your renewal, and you're just going to look at the price, and it's probably going to go up 5 to 10%. But the thing is, like, they'll exclude certain things. You have to read the policy, and I can guarantee you that if you're paying $10,000 a year, your agent's not reading it; it's just delivering it. He's like, "I'm saying whatever." Guarantee you're not reading 300 pages. So they'll start to exclude things just to cover them because they're taking a lot of losses.
Right.
On the personal lines, the personal line side is affecting the commercial side. So like homes in Florida, homes in Louisiana, homes in Texas, all getting hit with the hurricanes, getting hit with hail. You got a lot of roofers out there that are doing some shady stuff.
Not all roofers.
Not all, but
there's
some.
a few, right?
Yeah, and the good ones will appreciate that because they know that they're hurting their business as well. It's hard to get a contractor's license, I hear.
Right.
So, yeah, that's all affected. They're all taking heavy losses, and they want to make those losses back up. So I saw the other day that the insurance company is charging you $1.03 per whatever to get your policy right. $1.03 per 100. And they're paying out right now $1.30 per 100. So if you do the quick math, they're losing about 27 cents per $100. So they're losing money.
They're having to dip into reserves.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're getting a 5 to 10% increase, you're lucky. And you could get a flat one. You know, I'm just saying that's like on average. If you're a bigger company and you're paying $25,000, I guarantee you're going to see like a $2,500 increase, if not a little bit more or a little less. It's just average. And that's, you can say inflation, whatever. It's the whole economy as a whole. It's the fact that, buildings are costing 2 times what they used to cost. It's the fact that they're paying, properties just being destroyed. So, and let's also talk about like the barrier to entry into a lot of these jobs. So a lot of people are taking on things they shouldn't be taking on. And then at the end of the day, they're not being able to complete it. So there's a lot of factors. And it'll probably level out in the next 2 to 3 years, but I wouldn't be afraid to ask questions about your insurance policy. Read it yourself. Like, all you gotta do is flip to the exclusions. It's not that many pages, like probably 10 pages. Start reading through the exclusions, and it's the worst reading you'll ever do, but it's worth it. Save your business.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something you should be doing. You should be asking your agent about it. Just be honest about what you do as well. Like if you're getting on roofs and cleaning roofs, don't say that you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to be honest. And just taking it off your website or your Facebook page doesn't fix that.
No.
Dominate the day, that's what we're about to do. If you don't wanna dominate, then this podcast ain't for you. But if you are, then keep listening, cause every single damn day, the mission is to dominate. You already know, we're here to dominate the day. So if you wanna dominate every day, then let's go, it's time to grow. This is another episode of Dominate the Day.